Government, local authority, and parliament and state registration, court, tribunal services to business entity which was taxable. That is RCM basis. So overseas committee service to RBI, to restriction of NPA. Then it is yeah, RCM. Transfer of right to use by another person to promote it to relation. Development of rights and floor space index and construction contract RCM. Long-term lease of land 30 years or more, then RCM. Sponsorship service of organization of event of the firm or a body corporate recipe. If the body corporate other than body corporate of person is covered under the RCM FOX. Agency service, insurance agency to person carrying on insurance service, RCM, recovery agent, banking company to banking, say recovery agents to banking company, financial institution, NBFC, RBI, RCM basis. Direct selling agent other than the body corporate forms that be banking companies, RCM basis. Banking facilitator to banking company, RCM basis. Agent of the business corporation to banking corporation, agencies. Legal services by individual advocate or forms advocates of business entity whose turnover during the previous year exceed threshold limit registered business entities. Arbitrate service to business entity whose turnover does during the previous year exceed threshold limit of the registered business. Arbitration service and business entity RCMs. So director service to a company or body cooperative TDS should have been deducted under section 194 of the Companies Act and constitute supply. Then case of RCMs. Salary no. Security services by a person other than a body corporate to a registered person other than a government, local authorities, agency who had not registered to direct TDS and payment opting for composition scheme. Security services government other than that, but our person opting composite scheme RCM basis supplier recipient RCM body corporate to any recipient any person RCM forward charge. Other person to unregistered other charge. Other than body corporate to registered person composition forward charge. Other than body corporate to registered central government external forward charge. But other corporate to registered other than above RCM basis. Other body corporate body corporate or other body corporate RCM basis. Okay. Purchase from the unregistered person, inward supply or promoter of building. Inward supply is a promoter of building. Inward supply capital goods purchased from the registered person, GST not payable. Purchased from unregistered person, GST payable under the RCM and application rates. Inward supply of the promoter of building. Okay. Input and input service other than electrical, high speed diesel, motor, spirit, natural gas or TDR, FSI, long term leases. That is even registered person greater than 80%. Payable balance payable from the unregistered person, cement and GST payable on RCM basis other than the GST not payable under RCM. Balance purchases from RCM from less than 80% up to 80% cement payable RCM basis other than goods GST payable on RCM 40%. Beyond 80% cement GST payable RCM basis and other goods payable RCM. Not payable. Other goods not payable. Other goods not payable. Other not payable. Liability to pay GST on e-commerce operator, in the case of notified services apply. Housekeeping services are done, clam, cure services, unregistered person, supplier unregistered person, RCM business. Accommodation services, Onco people, makeup trick, unregistered persons providing the RCM business. Supplier RCM business and a transport supplier, recipient supplier. Transportation of packages from any type of motor vehicles, Ola, Uber, and then registered person, unregistered person, e-commerce character. Eating food from restaurants, Swiggy, Zomato, registered on person, RCM, who e-commerce pay. Supply of food from registered hotel, restaurant or hotel being declared on tariff more than 5,000 per unit, e-commerce are not covered under section 9. Important points: when the e-commerce industry is able to pay GST on above cases that are not required to deduct TCS. GST able to pay GST on service, they are not required to deduct TCS. Only in the case of notified service, section 9, class 5, e-commerce liable to pay GST. In other cases, supplier shall pay GST, e-commerce and shall pay GST and commission. Every e-commerce operator who is liable to pay GST, who is liable to take TCS and compulsory required to get registered. Also, every supplier of goods taxable exempted through e-commerce suppliers, its compliance is required to get registered under GST respective of the aggregate turnover. Supplier notified service section 95. Supplier other than notified service, identified the e-commerce operator is required to get registered only when the aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit of registration. Supreme Court of UI Mohit Mineral Limited. The case and levied by the GST as on a transaction is unconditional and GST shall be levied. That levy of GST on the transaction is unconstitutional and GST should not be levied. In the case of supplier notified service, a supplier other than the notified section 95, so e-commerce is required to get registered only when the aggregate turnover exceeds the threshold limit. Okay. What is applicable? TDS, TCS. TDS section 51, TCS section 52 of CGST Act. Supply to notified service TDS. Supplies to e-commerce operator. The notified supplies government notified recipients or government, central government, state government, union territory and LA. Okay. Government agency, public sector undertaking, government body whose equity participation is in the government greater than 50%. They need to collect TDS for them. They are collected TDS. TCS. Supplier to e-commerce operator. Supplier should be different from e-commerce operator and other e-commerce should not be an mere agent. That is payment gateway logistic one. They should cut TCS. Who is liable to deduct TCS? Liable to deduct and to what rate? TDS and TCS. TDS 2%, TCS 1%. Section 51 of CGST not applicable. Supplier is unregistered person not applicable. Supplier is exempted and not exempted not applicable. Contract values does not exceed 2,50,000 not applicable. Supplies between notified recipients government not applicable. Recipient liable to pay GST under RCM basis. Then for to pay under RCM basis, he need to pay the non-paid. Creation of the recipient and the place of supply under the same store. TCS e-commerce operator not applicable. Suppliers unregistered supplies are exempted and non-taxable. Notified supplies under section 5. Payment is not collected by e-commerce operator. TDS computed on the amount remitted to the supplier by recipient. TDS is not applicable. It is not an intrastate supply and recipients are other state. TDS computed on amount remitted to the supplier by the registration. TDS is not applicable. It is an intrastate supplies and recipient are state. Compares amount remitted by supplier remitted to supplier by recipient, and TDS is not applicable intra-state supply and recipient trans-state. Recipient another state level competition of complaints. TDS 2%, TCS 1%. Okay. TDS section 51 of CGST Act, TCS section 52 of CGST Act. Value of supplier. TDS deduction shall be payable on the government and the statement of GST 7 shall be filed by 10th of every month following every month. And class certificate of GST 7 shall be issued by the supplier no time limit. TDS section 51 CGST Act. Late fees of delay of filing on 25 each day and subject to the maximum 1,000 rupees. Annual return not required to be filed. In the case of TCS, 2% to 1% collected. Payments toward contract value excluding GST less return during the month. TCS deducted shall be payable in government and the statement of GST rate shall be filed 10th of every month during every month. No such requirement. TCS section 52 of CGST Act. Late fees delay is rupees 100 every day. Maximum delay is 5,000. Annual return to be filed with GST 9 and 31st December succeeding management. Interest of 18% per annum is payable for the period of delay in the TDS and TCS. General penalty of 25,000 on GST and 20,000 on SGST is not about complaints, and TDS default minus penalty is equal to 10,000 or TDS involved whichever is higher under that. Minus penalty 10,000, which is higher under that. The no TDS is deducted shall be reflected in GST 2A of the supplier, which is reflect the electronic cash ledger and used for payment of GST liability. It can also be used for payment of interest, penalty, and late fees payable. Time limit for reflection of GST or night TCS return. 30th of the November of succeeding financial year or the date of filing of annual return for the financial year, whichever is earlier. Activation, okay. Operator பண்ணிக்கலாம். Illustration of TCS. So supplier to e-com industry and buyer. So first what is happening, contract to sell mobile for plus for with a commission of 1000 with GST. So order the mobile, so mobile is invoice of 10,000 plus 20% 12,800 is given. So then this delivered to mobile, then payment of 12,800 is coming. What happens, e-com monitor GST payable and commission 1000 rupees, 1080 or 780. TD is like 10,000 1% or 100%. So GST payable on mobile is 2,800 is equal to GST payable on mobile 2,800 gross and 2250 or 180 minus 100. So 100 380 కలిసి 280. So then the commission ITC and the commission of 180 and TCS 1% is equal to 200. The amount received is equal to price minus commission on GST plus TCS is equal to 180 minus 1180 minus 1000 is equal to 1150 180. Okay. TCS 1%, TDS 2%. Segment 5 summary of the important circulars. Circular number G invoice issued invoice clarification, and the via circular number 1 2017 to 7717 via circular 2 2021 2017. The interstate movement of various mode of conveyance carrying goods or passenger or both are for repairs and maintenance between the distinct person as specified in the section of section 225.4 75 class 4 of the CGST Act, except in the case where the movement is for the further supply of for the same conveyance, it is liable to GST. Clarification: it is clarified that the interstate movement of trains, buses, trucks, tankers, trailers, vehicles, container craft carrying goods and passengers aboard for repairs and maintenance shall not constitute supply and not chargeable to GST. However, the supply applicable CGST, SGST in the case may be shall be levied on the repair and maintenance done on such conveyance. For example, the above circles extended to the interstate movement of rigs, tools, spares, all the goods and vehicles like cranes, and except in the case of the movement of such goods is further supply is made. Note the circular can be applied even in case of intrastate supply. It has a multiple registration like state. Circular number 54, 57, 31, 27. When an agent is termed as an acting as a behalf of the principal, agent should be the present principal of all respect, raise invoice in the name or accept invoice in the name of his agent. Represent principal in all respect, and raise invoice in the name or accept invoice in his name, agent name. That is agent name. Circular number 1127 for supply of books, pamphlets, pouches, envelopes, annual reports, leaflets, cartoons, boxes, etc. printed or with design, logo, name, address, other contents supplied by the recipient. Such supplies would be constitute supply, and the recipient of supplies would be constitute supply or supply of service. The printing of books, pamphlets, pouches, annual reports, and liable or likely content of supplied by supplier of service. The printed envelopes, letter cards, printed box, tissues, napkins, etc. printed with designs, logo, etc. supplied by the recipient. As a supply of goods. So supply of goods, supply of two. Okay. Circular number 34 8 2018. 1 3 2018, where the activity of bus bodybuilding is a supply of goods or service determined on the basis of the principal supply involved transaction, based on the principle of supply involved in the transaction. The circle number 34 8 2018, where the rethreading of tires is a supply of goods or service. Supply of rethreaded tires where the old tires belong to supplier, and rethreading tires is supply of goods. If the old tires belong to the recipient, then the tire supply service. Circular number 34 8 2018, when the priority sector lending certificates are outside the preview of GST and therefore it's not taxable. In the GST, there is no exemption trading of public priority sector lending service. Thus, PSL are taxable on the goods of always chargeable to IGST under RCM basis. Recipient to pay tax. Now, whether artworks sent by artists to galleries or for exhibitions or not lending to supply, it is only when the buyer select a particular artwork displays on the gallery that the actual supply takes place, and applicable to GST would be payable at the time of supply. Where the tenancy rights are pagati system chargeable to GST. Relation to essential property is exempted. Relation to commercial property is acceptable. GST on directors' remuneration. Executive directors or whole-time directors in the employees of the company, and TDS section 192 of Income Tax Act not covered under GST. A part of that remuneration which is declared separately and under the other salary is subject to TDS section 192 treated as a consideration, therefore taxable under RCM basis. Reverse charge mechanism. Circular number and which is where insured getting no claim bonus from the insurance company is a supply service. It is not a supply of service, and no claim bonus can be considered as consideration for the supply provided by insurance insured to insurance company, insured to insurance company, where the interest received on the bill creditor agency is chargeable to GST. The bill creditor agency is raising invoice in names of principal. The interest collected by the bill creditor agency is exempted under the interest and loans advances. If bill creditor agency is raising invoice its name, then the interest collected on the bill creditor agency is taxable under the interest and amount of delaying in the receipt of consideration. Bill credit agency. Agency என்ன? Segment 3 invoice and time of supply POS and due date of invoice section 31 goods section 31 34 31 4 31 7 normal cases continuous supplies are in sale on approval return basis. Normal supplies section 31A supply of invoice moment of goods at the time of removal supply, so invoice should be issued. Supply does not invoice moment of goods at the time of delivery, invoice should be issued. Continuous supply of goods date at which account statement is issued and the payment are received at the date, invoice should be issued. Sale on approval or return basis 6 months on the date of approval or date of supply, the date of acceptance by the buyer, whichever here கொடுத்ததுலேருந்து 6 months or date of removal. Services section 31 to section 31 5 4 2 3 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 normal cases on banking sector, insurance sector 45 days on the date of completion. Date of completion, then 45 days in date of completion. Normal case banking sector, other sector 30 days in date of completion. Continuous supply services so due date of installment 6 months. Due date of installment ascertained on the contract, and due date of installment, the due date of installment is not ascertained on the contract as when the payment is received, and the payment is linked to the completion of event and as when the event is completed. So cessation of service immediately upon cessation, that is with appropriate amount retained, then that is supplies. Continuous supply of services, service which has taken more than 3 months to complete and involves a periodic payment obligation. Continuous supply. Whether details of a recipient to be mentioned in the invoice. Rule 46, invoice value less than 50,000 return B2B, name, address, GST. B2C, service through e-commerce operation, ODS plus name, address, recipient. Other than service recipient details required only if requested by them. And greater than 50,000, name, address, GS required. B2C, name, address, recipient, enclosing addresses, delivery of that state codes. It's included. TVOS in case of goods and service, goods and service. Section TDS, TVOS. TVOS in time of supply. Time of supply of goods and time of supply services. Section 12.1 liability to pay GST domain on the basis of time of supply. Section 13.1 section 12.2 time of supply in the case of forward charge mechanism. ADOI and ODDOI. What is ADOI? ADOI actual date of invoice. DDOI DD date of invoice with our earlier actual date of invoice or date of invoice which was earlier. So GST not payable on advance in the case of goods covered in FM, not advance. In the case of person opting for composition schemes and time of sale is actual date of invoice or date of invoice date of payment whichever is earlier. Services in the case of us the time of supply is and the forward set mechanism. Date of invoice, actual date of invoice or date of invoice when the date of invoice actually whichever is earlier and the date of invoice not within the due date of invoice, then the date of C or date of payment, date of copy date of completion or date of payment whichever is earlier. The data that's GST payable on advance in the case of service covered under FCM basis. Section 13.2 section 12.13 TOIs on the RCM basis. TOIs on RCM basis the date in which goods is received, the date on which in which payment is made supplier, or 31st of the data, 31 from the date of invoice. GST payable on advances on the goods or RCM basis. Data time of supply in the case of RCM. Date of payment whichever made earlier, 61 days on date of invoice. GST payable on advance in the cases of RCM basis. Section 12 In case of vouchers, identifiable voucher at the time of issuance of voucher, non-identifiable voucher at the time of receipt redemption voucher. Section 12. In the case of time of supply, ascertained as per the per section applicable in the case of evasion of GST by the taxable person. Periodical return in the case of periodic return has been filed. The due date is furnished such a return. Periodical return not filed. Date of payment of GST. Section time of supply not ascertained as per the second section. Section 13.5. Application in the case of evasion of GST by the taxable person. The periodical return has been filed. Due date of filing such return. Periodical return is not filed due to payment of GST. Section 12.6. In case of addition to value in form of interest, late fees, etc. Delay of payment of consideration as and when the additional consideration received, GST is a recipient basis. Section 36. Addition point date of payment in case of supplier, in case of recipient. In the case of player, date of payment. The date of entry in the books or date of credit in the bank account, whichever is yearly for supplier. In the case of recipient, date of the entry in the books or data debits in the book account, whichever is earlier. In the case of goods covered in the FCM, advance and the GST are payable, and GST is payable only upon the invoice and the TOS due date, and invoice and actual date of invoice, whichever is earlier. But in case of services under the FCM, GST is payable on advance. In the case of goods under the FR mechanism, the advances GST is not liable, and the GST payable on the bound invoice on the time of supply, the due date of invoice, actual date of invoice earlier. But in the case of services, the FCM is GST payable on advances upon 1,000 rupees received on excess of invoice. In the case of services, is covered under the FR mechanism. Time of supply is the date of invoice determined under section 13.2 or a supplier option to choose. In the case of supply of supply of service between associate enterprises, section 92 in income tax act, when the supplier is outside India and recipient in India, or supplier outside India, recipient in India, and time of supply can be time of supply can be date of entry of books in the recipient and date of payment of supplier, whichever is earlier. When the goods or the payment goods are taken outside India for exhibition, it is not supplied, but when the same is not bought back in 6 months, it is deemed to be supplied in terms of section 31.7. Tax component should be shown separately in invoice 33. TOIs in case of change in rate applicable only in the case of services section 14. Date of completion DOC supply before the change in the rate, after change in rate, and date of invoice is equal to DOI, rate of payment date of payment DOP, whichever is earlier, date of completion of the place. Date of payment and date of invoice whichever earlier. After the change in rate, if both the date of invoice before the change in rate, the date of invoice and date of payment whichever is earlier. Either the date of invoice or date of payment which changes the rate, and then after the change in rate, the date of payment whichever is later. Sorry. The date of payment section 14, or the date of entry of books and the rate of credit of the bank account, whichever is earlier. The payment is credited in 4 working days from the change in the rate, or the date of credit in the bank account. If the payment is credited after 4 working days of change in the credit. Various document involving GST documents, certification issuance, who will issue, time of issue, tax invoices, supplying, taxable goods, taxable service, certification, who will invoices, suppliers, register, suppliers, unregistered, suppliers, register, suppliers, unregistered, recipient will issue the same. Recipient on RCM basis. Time of supplier is unregistered, recipient will issue the time. Specified section C above. Bill of supply, the registered person supplies and exempted goods or exempt services paying tax under the composition scheme. Who will issue supplier specific person same as the due date of invoice. Invoice come billing invoices come billing of supplier registered person supplying taxable as well as exempted goods or services both on to unregistered person. Suppose who is supplier specified the same as the date of invoice. In the case of the low value supply, in the case of less than 200, the tax invoice will be bill of supplier not required to if the recipient is unregistered, and the recipient does not need to invoice, and the consolidated invoice need to be raised by the end of the day. In the case of multiple status on the invoice, BTK is deemed as invoices and it will be issued even in the values supplies less than 200. Debit note, if the taxable person charges less than invoice is less than actual rate of invoice, and the tax charge or tax invoice is less than tax payable supplier not specified usually receipt basis. Debit note, credit note, the taxable value charge in excess than the taxable value supplier credit notes cannot be issued in case of the bad debts. So bad debts credit issued here before the 30th November, end of February, due to the date of filing returns before 30th November for financial year or end of an annual return, either it's a tax charge is excessive of the tax payable, new supply credit news sale return credit return where the goods are supplied the way service at both supplied or deficient defective supply and issue credit note received tax invoices. Every registered person who has been granted registration with the effect on the date of earlier than the date of issuance certificates registered to him may issue the revised tax invoice in respect of taxable supplies affected during the period starting from the effective day of registration till the date of issuance of certificate of registration. Supplier revised tax invoice cannot be issued if the application is registered not made within 30 days of the date of liability to register arises. Effective date of registration if applied within 30 days from the date of when liable, the date of which such a person is liable to registration. If not applied within 30 days, date of which registration is granted. Within 1 month from the date of certificate of registration. Recipient voucher. Whenever advance is received from the supplier from the recipient, supplier not in the required only in the payment is received before the issuance of invoice, not specified immediately upon advances. Payment voucher, the registered person is liable to pay tax under section 93 and 94 shall be issued a payment voucher at the time of making payment to supplier recipient and not specified to immediately upon payment. A refund voucher, the refund voucher is a refund is advance is received or invoice is not yet generated. Supplier even if the amount is refunded but in issuance of tax invoice, then the credit note shall be issued by the supplier to the recipient, not was immediate upon refund. Key insurance credit note. Delivered children, the supply of liquid gas where the quantities of time to removal have not been known. Transportation of goods for job work, transportation of goods for reason other than we have suppliers should give delivery children not specified as and when the goods are moved. Supplier invoice in such cases, normal transaction, insurer, banking company, telecom operator, all as a normal transaction within 45 days from the date of supply of invoice, and supplier is equal to within 30 days from the date of supply, telecom operators, all other 30 days from the date of supply. Transaction between testing person at the time before the entry and supplier books only for expiry of the quarterly during the supply is made. Receipt voucher as a refund order. Date of invoice, GST payment rate on time of supply. If date of invoice is equal to payment received balance amount, supplier may issue receipt voucher to payment received balance, supplier must issue receipt voucher to recipient. Payment received and advance, supplier must issue receipt voucher. Recipient goods GST not payable, service GST payable. Payment received and advance, supplier shall issue receipt voucher. Receipt of goods not refund, no refund. Payment is advance received service refund claim GST payable paid. Amount refundable, supply cancelled, refund can be claimed, and the supplier shall issue credit note to the recipient, liability gets reduced. Okay. An unregistered person is not supposed to collect GST from the recipient. Section 32 HSN code in invoice. Usually HSN code for the goods it's 8 digit, however, and the annual turnover will be less than 5 crores, and the B2B 4 digit number mentioned, and more than 5 years B2B and B2C 6 digit mentioned. For these services accounting code SAC for 6 digit invoice. Obtaining the following for the invoice registration I portal with respect to normal tax invoice uploading GSN as per the IRP known for each invoicing. Invoice refer number, quick reference number, and digital signature. ATO must any previous year to 17, 18, and 21, 22 with respect to 10 to 22. Less than 10 crores B2B invoice not required, 5 crores right, and B2C suppliers in dynamic QR code invoice. So 5 crores to 500 crores, 10 crores right. B2C invoice required. It's a dynamic QR code is involved, and a B2B invoice and B2C dynamic code. Invoice should be prescribed as the GST inventory 01. Invoice 01, it is an optional for the taxpayer what the annual turnover between less than 5 crores. E-invoice to get auto-populated in GST 01 and e-way bill. A physical copy of invoice not required in the case of e-way is applicable. The QR code it can produce before the proper officer verification required. Types of transaction for QEQ invoice required. eBay E2B transaction outward services whether covered in FCM or RCM. Zero rate applies as a credit rates or zero debit notes P2B. Dynamic QR code details required to be dynamic QR code. Supplier GST UPI ID of the supplier. Exception payment connected in the e-commerce industry or any other person. UPI of the e-commerce industry is other person who is mentioned. Bank account IFSC exception not received in UPI ID is linked to the bank account. Invoice number of date and exception no required if any detail sales or unique reference account is attached. Invoice number with the breakup of the value of tax. Exemption part recover received before invoice and remaining after the invoice. Then only the balance due should be mentioned. The exemption mentioning a dynamic QR is invoice. If a payment is received before or at the time of generation of invoice and cross reference to the payment received in the case of cash basis, the date of which cash is received is mentioned in invoice. Location of supplier India, location of recipients outside India, point of sale is India, payment is converted into foreign products and it is not an export of service as dynamic QR is not required. So now supplies in India then recipient outside India, but point of sale is India. Irrespective of the annual turnover, e-invoice is not required in the case of following suppliers. Biggest banking companies and financial corporations no invoice. Insurance company required. Goods and transport agencies are required. Government transport and local authority are required. Exhibition of films and multiplex not required. Yes, he said, but it is developer required to issue invoice and QR code. Transportation of passenger transfer any more not required. Irrespective of ATO, QR is not required for the case of following suppliers. Big two. QR code is not required. Banking company not required. Insurance not required. GST, transport agency, goods and government required. Transportation passengers. OIDR supplier located outside India making supply in the NTO or India and exhibition of films in multiple cinemas. Ectovical. Circular number 169 issue when exemption for mandatory generation of invoices available for the entity as a whole or only respect to certain supplies made certain entity and which if the supply classified that exemption is available for the entity as a whole. E-invoice process taxpayer supplier bill ERP system JSON upload the e-invoice JSON to IRP and digital sign the invoice and QR codes response. Supplier can view the invoice availability in GST 1. Invoice system portal IRP deduplicate check and generate invoice reference number sign in the digital signature that QR code send GST to the system send to e-way system. Government GST system has stored and GST invoice and registers into GST system sent to e-way bill system to deduplicate GST system now has unique invoice number, unique number, GST1 updated as seller and GST2 be updated buyer. Buyer can view registration invoice from IRP, use QR code for verify receipt, use the ITS related to the service of section 2B. No defense. Supplier is required to issue an e-invoice but not issued e-invoice, issue normal invoice, then the recipient cannot avail ITC. Even though such invoices reflected section 2A, 2B and recipient. Supply segment 4 place of supply POS, place of supply goods and services, import and export, other cases input section level of IGST, other cases section 10 IGST, services is location of supplier, location of recipient in India section 12 of IGST, location of supplier, location of recipient outside India section 13 of IGST. If the both the location of supplier just location of recipient is outside India, the POS point of sale can be determined in the case of service and is exempted. The Supreme Court in the unit of India Mohit Mineral Limited held that GST is not to be levied in this transaction. The point of sale of the goods and section 10, section 11, section of IGST Act. Section situation POS. Section 10 1A supply involves movement of goods ending point. Section 10 1B supply to ship to bill to ship and transaction billing address. Section 10 1 say supply does not involve movement of goods, occasion of goods. Section 1D goods are assigned for install and occasion of install assembly. Section 10 1E supply of board and convenience starting point of goods. Section 11 1 import deemed interstate location of the import. Section 11 2 export deemed interstate location of the outside India. In the case of conflict between section 10(1)(a), 10(1)(b) and 10(1)(c), the above section 10(1)(d), section 10(1)(e), then section 10(1)(d) and 10(1)(e), location of the assembly, occasion of goods, it shall provide goods and assembly. So specified provision prevail over the general provision. Goods and where the goods is located, then the starting point of goods or the location of the assembly that is located. In the case of services, the location of supply in India and the point of supply, what supply is determined as per section 13. If in India, then it will be never comes into the intrastate supply, but write it as a deemed intrastate supply. As referred to intrastate supply as only section 12. Point as being areas of section 12, section 13 of IGST Act. Point POS and nature of service, nature of services and POS and section 13. B2B location of the recipient, B2C location of the recipient, they go it is recorded supply, it is not available, then point of say if the nature of service general provisions POS location of recipient, records of supply if not available. If the IP in India and IP location and if IP is outside India, let of location of register recipient of location of recipient, relation to immovable property IP including accommodation, location of IP, location of immovable property. Food, beauty related performance occasion, training and performance operation, the location of recipient, B2C performance occasion, all other action and general provision. In the case nature of business, performance based individual, physical presence the recipient required, performance occasion, physical presence of recipient not required, general provision. General provisions perform based goods, physical appearance of the goods not required, location of the goods, physical presence of the goods required, performance of the location. On the exemption to section 13, POS shall is in location of the recipient instead of location where service are performed in the following building cases. The goods temporarily imported and exported after the repair of the process. In the case of R&D and any testing and biomedicals, including other conditions for the export or service activity, the repair maintenance are ready to character of the parts are used in business. Maintenance of repair and overall service which in respect of sheep and basin, this respect of using course of other business. Admission event organization, B2B later working of recipient, B2C the event of location, event rated admission location, event location POs are in as per section 12. B2B location of recipient and B2C starting place of the goods in case of India to outside India ending point outside India. Nature of the transportation of goods other than the main courier ending point, main courier general provision. And B2B to B2B location of recipient, B2C starting point of the passenger, transportation charge starting point of passenger is given in the case of section 13. And the B2C starting point of conveyance, starting service on board of conveyance, starting point of conveyance. General provision OIDR, and in the case of the event on the OIDR yellow location of recipient. Banking and other financials, general provision. In the case of section 13 on the yellow service, the services are provided to the contact account holder of the bank and otherwise general provision. Intermediate service, general provision, if not location supplier. Hiring and means of transportation, usual general provision, section 12. Section 13, transport of vehicles, general provision, other than 30 days of location supply, 30 days general provision. Telecommunication, broadcom, DTH, general provision for section 13. Fixed line equipment location, mobile billing, mobile prepaid and dealers addresses, online discharge and general provision. Meaning of intermediary. Intermediary is someone who arrange or facilitate the supply of goods or services or security between two or more persons, wherein two or more of them transport in the supply of goods, service and security means supply. Then one of them arrange or facilitate two and the said aim supply is actually supply. Therefore, the outsourced outsourced services do not fall under the intermediate service. Section 12 B2B and Section B2C, training and performance appraisal, B2B and B2C, and training and organization of event and transportation of goods and passengers. Section 12. Section 13 location of supplier of point of sale, banking service, address account holder, intermediate service account holder, hiring and other than aircraft vehicles over period of 30 days. Continue. Role IGST rules, rules and descriptions, and how to determine the point of sale. Rule description. Member determining the proposition of value attributable to different states or union territory in the case of a supply of advertisement service in the central government or state government and statutory body or local authority. Note that in other cases it's amount payable, that is expenditure ratio. BARC, Broadcast Audience Research Council, or TRI, Telecom Regulation Authority, have figures in last week and given the quarter with use calculation for the successive quarter in the date of returning to two or more of state ratio of the population shall be used. How to determine the point of sale? Type of advertiser, factors of U value of allocation, on time, length of the railway track in each station, states and union territory for other train, on railway ticket, number of railway ticket, railway stations and each station, number of railway station in each state. On the TV channels, number of viewers published by the BERC and other channels in state and union. On internet, deemed to be provided by the number of internet subscribers in all state and union territory. Through SMS, number of telecom subscribers subscribed by the TRI and other states. 4 and 5 computation of value of service where the immovable property located in more than one state where the location of supplier and recipient is in India. Same provision as section 12 and section 13. Types of services relating to immovable property, factor proportionate to value proportion. Accommodation and auxiliary services. Then number of nights and stays in the property. Accommodation of house, boat or vessels and access service. Time spent by the boat or vessel in the each state unit. All other services provided in relation to immovable property not covered under area of immovable property lying in each state. Section 59 computation of value of service where the event is organized in more than one state and where the location of supplier or the recipient in India. QAC as per the accounting application of expenditure ratio. Same provision of section 1213. Computation of value service where the leased circuit is installed in more than one state and the location of supplier or recipient state. The supplier service shall be treated as a made in one of the same of the respective state and union. Proportional number of points lying in state and union. Computation of value of service where the service provided more than one state in relation to goods and services as occasion of supplier and recipient outside India. Taken as being such each state committed values of suppliers at determined in terms of contract agreement entered into the agreement and absence of such contract agreement. Case and manner of computation of proportionality. Services supplied in the same goods equal ratio. Services supplied in different goods invoice cover ratio. Service supplied to individual cap ratio. Clarification through circulars. In the case of export of services outsourced in the portion of the service contract to another person outside India, it would be the tax treatment of the same proportion of the contract on the hand of exporter. It may be extended when all the full consideration of the outsourced service is not received by the exporter in India. It is clarified that supplier of services located in India would be liable to pay IGST on reversal basis on the import of service on the portion of service in which is provided by supplier located outside India. The recipient service located outside India. Therefore, the said suppliers of service located in India would be liable to take ITC and IGST software. In the case of cargo handling ship, the point of supply would be determined based on the general provision and not in the terms of immovable property supplies. Point of supply software designed by the supplier located taxable territory to service recipient located non-taxable territory by using the same proportion hardware toolkit and complete composition where the testing is actually service location of the service recipient as per the section 32 IGST Act. In the case of cutting, polishing of polishing activity, unpolished diamond which is temporarily imported into India is not put into use in India, then place of supply would be determined as per the provision contained section 13.2 of IGST Act. Section 13.6 overrides another provision of section 13 of IGST Act. Service to relation to immovable property, performance-based services to relation to goods, performance-based services in relation to individual, organization event, provided wholly in India, point of sale is India, provided wholly outside India, point of sale is outside India, partly in India, partly in outside India, point of sale is deemed to be in India. Segment 5 value of supply. Assessment value is equal to transaction value determined as per section 15 of the following condition. Price must be the sole consideration of sale and supplier and recipients are not related. Inclusion section 15 to supplier recipient. Supplier goods and service on both. Payment of supply transaction value section 15. Any tax other than GST shall be included in value. Section 15 2A. Interest on the late fees by the delayed payment will be included in the value. Incurs expenditure recovered from the recipient. In the case of cost of supply, such expenditure should be included in the value. As per pure agent on behalf of the recipient, such expenditure shall be excluded from the value. Section 33. Incurs expenditure on behalf of supplier, recipient such expenditure shall be included in value. On behalf of the account, such expenditure shall be excluded from the value. Subsidy received from the supply section 15 to a direct link due to price subsidy based on outward supply from central government others to be excluded from the value, to be included in the value. Not directly linked to price, that is a subsidy irrespective of the outward supply, ignore and not consider the value, treated as an alternation. In the question assigned, consider the given price after the reducing subsidy, the amount is given option. Version price from subsidy is called given price. Question for pure agent section rule 33. A supplier should enter into agreement with the recipient of act and a pure agent with respect to the expenditure. The supplier should recover only the actual amount incurred. Supplier should not hold the title or the goods or service to procure. Supplier should not use the goods or supply to procure for the personal purposes. The passenger service fee, PSF and user development fees collected from the airline operator on the passenger are to be remitted to airport operator and falls under the expenditure incurred by a pure agent. Exclusion for value of supply section 15(3) CGST Act. Discount given example treatment before a time of supply trade discount allowed as deduction after supply but terms agreed before supply the cash discount allowed as deduction credit note shall be issued recipient should reverse proportion etc after supply and terms not agreed before end of season sales agreement not allowed as deduction GST payable value before discount. Whether GST is applicable on the additional or penal interest or on the overdue loans. There is no due transaction involving EMI, then the relevant to the trade. In the view of provision of a law discussing above, there is two options. Only the GST application is the follow. Option 1 and option 2 higher purchase transaction, higher purchase transaction. Supplier collects the register, supplier collects the concentration installment, whereas installment covers the price of the goods and plus interest towards the prime value of money. Interest is included in the value or even the penal interest delay of payment installation also included in the value. Higher purchase the supplier finance the product and collect the principal interest in the EMI installation incurred including such a financial transaction exempted and interest is exempted. Interest exempted. Treatment exclusion given price arrival time amount as per provision in the given price treatment to be included already included na ignore amount to be excluded as in given price already excluded na ignore to be included in the given price it's not included na add back to the amount to be excluded and the given price is not excluded na deduct. Circular number 186 18/2022 12th October 27 2024 issue whether no claim bonus given by the insurance claim to an insurer can be claimed as deduction while the company value supply. It shall be claimed as a deduction for its value so if the same shown in the invoice as per section 13 free. Circular number where the incentive paid by the Ministry of Electronics and in 2092 incentive paid by the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology and to acquire a bank and acquiring bank under the incentive scheme of RuPay, debit card and low value PMI UPI. It is considered as a nature of subsidy for central government, not being included in value. Summary of CGST rules 17, 20, rule 27 and 31 related to valuation. If any of the both conditions not satisfied, the assessable value shall be determined in terms of the CGST rules 2017 follow. Price is not a sole consideration. Rule 2177 GST supply open market value or a monetary consideration plus a monetary value of monetary non-monetary consideration like kind of quantity cost plus 10%. Transaction between a related party including distinct person. Rule 28 GST receipt eligible for 100% ITC open market value transfer actually deemed recipients are eligible for 100% ITC and open market value and like kind quantity cost plus 10%. Alternate in the case of goods at the option of supplier of the each supply 90% of the price in which supply recipient supplies likely kind and quantity to be unrated further and the buyer shall not possess the quantity but should have been sold as such. 90% of the price in which recipients applies the kind and quality to underrated buyer. Recipient should not possess these goods but should have been sold as such. Principal agent transaction section 71C rule 28 and on option of supplier of such a supply on market price 90% of the price which is recipient supplies the kind or quantity related cost plus 90%. If the above is not possible, the value shall be determined in Rule 31 of CGST. GST rule. Rule 30, the cost plus 30% cost shall be compute cost of production in the case of manufacturing, the cost of acquisition in the case of trader, and the cost of providing service in the case of service provider. In such case, invoice can be generated for any of the value, even 1 rupee for the consideration value. In case of service, Rule 30 is skipped and proceed in the Rule 31 and determine the cost of providing services certificate. Open market value, like kind quantity, comparable time, like kind quantity, okay. Comparable time, same date, nearest date, comparable value, transaction value plus value on the rows, 10% comparable supplies value, same supplier, 10%, kind like quantity 10%. Comparable supplier, some same supplier or other supplier, same supplier. Comparable goods, same goods for same goods or minor difference acceptable. GST implication on the debit note and credit note section 34. The when who time limit consequence of supplier, consequence of recipient. Debit note who buyers will give a seller issue. The recipient has to pay on the amount beyond the invoice. Supplier there is invoice supplier to receive invoice will increase. Time not applicable. Increase in the output tax liability reported in GST 1, GST 3. Increase in ITC credit. The report on GST 3B are available to ITC. Credit note recipient may have to pay. So recipient may have to pay an amount less than invoice. So the data would say. So the supply is invoice reduced on the 30th November of financial year of the date of filing which was earlier, and decrease in output tax liability and required in the GSTR 1 and GSTR 3B reported in GSTR 3B under the reverse ITC. GST rule 2017 value of supply in special cases even either TV or transaction value or value under the rules or option of the supplier in each supply. Rule situation value of supply rule 32. Situation foreign exchange transaction including money changing option to be decided beginning on the financial year which shall be applicable throughout the financial transaction value is called the currency conversion fee in the currency market price. Value of supply option of rule 32 to A. One of the currency exchange involves rupees and RBA reference rate available for the currency on the day. The bid rate ask rate minus RBA reference rate is equal to bid date by ask rate into minus RBA reference rate. Minus the unit of currencies. One of the currency exchange involves rupees and RBA reference rate not available in this amount rupee into 1% of the valuation. When both the currency exchange involve foreign currency, convert both the currency into rupee using RBA reference rate 1% whichever is lower. Into 1% whichever is lower. Okay. Option 2 section 32 rule 32 to be gross amount is less than 1 lakh 1% or 250 which is higher, or a gross amount 1 lakh to 10 lakhs 1000 rupees or 0.5% or 1 lakh on the gross rate exceeding 1 lakh, and more than 10 lakhs 5500 plus 0.1% gross rate or exceeding 10 lakhs are subject to maximum 60,000. So this is the computation of calculating GST. 1 lakh up to 1 lakh 1%, 1 lakh to 10 lakh 1000 plus 0.5%, more 1 lakh 10 lakh, more than 10 lakhs na 5500 plus 0.01%. And the cost maximum can be 60,000. Rule 32.3. Air travel agency on 5% of the base fare value or domestic charges, on 5% of the base fare value domestic booking, or 10% of the base fare value of the international booking. Rule air travel agency service. Rule 32. Life insurance businesses. The life insurance policy is the entire premium. A single premium annuity, 10% of single premium. A reinvestment policy when the amount allocated for the reinvestment is initiated to policyholder. Gross minus amount allocated to investment account holder. The investment is not communicated to householder, then the treated as other policies. Other policies 25% of premium first year and 12.5% in the subsequent year. Risk cover single premium 10 percentage investment and parts 20% plus yeah, buying and selling of second-hand goods. The value is equal to sales real value minus purchase value. At a margin scheme, no value in the margin is negative. The ITC shall not be available on purchase. In the case of repossession, the purchase price minus equal to original price minus 5% every quarter. Therefore, in the price, so per 20%. 20 percentage of purchase shall be disposed of the repossession asset. In the case of section rule 32B, in case of coupon voucher, money value of supply redeemed against such a voucher or coupon. Rule 32.7 notified service between the distinct person and author consideration. Nil if ITC available for purchase and service yet to be notified the purpose. A value of supply in the case of lottery, betting, gambling, and horse racing. Section Rule 31E of the GST 2017. Particulars and values. The supply of lottery organized by the central government authorized by the face value of ticket, a price of notified by the organizing state, whichever is higher into 10 by 128. Include GST 28% GST, where the actionable claim in the case of in the form of change in the will in betting or gambling or 100% the value of bet or amount paid to the totalizer, not on the commission aimed under the totalizer. TCS not to be included in value. Section 15 to the CGST Act or taxes says duty shall be including the value of supply, but the TCS is not included in the value of interim levy or but not having a character of taxes. So chapter 75, 76. GST and tax laws duties and including the value of supply. TCS is not included in value and it is an interim supply but shall having the character clause 76. Value to be adopted on computation GST on services of the business facilitator or a business correspondent or banking company. Circular number 86 CFI and GST. Value of supply of service is equal to supply services banking company. So first the customer service banking corporations. Bank facilitator provide service to customer banking facility, then service charges will be collected from the customer, then remitted to the banking and the commission is paid to them. So value of supply service charges, value of supply is commission for them. In the case of banking and GST payable on FCM basis on the commission. In the case of BF GST payable GST on RCM basis. In the case of BF, okay, banking facilitator GST based on RCM basis by the banking company. In this case, the commission is paid from GST paid commission. Relevant date for determining the exchange rate on the purpose of valuation and the compute of the GST rule. Rule 34 of the GST rules of authority. Relevant exchange rates in the case of goods, in the case of services. Rate notified by the CBSE prevailing on the time of supply determined by section 30. The rate determined by the GA prevailing on the time of supply determined by section 30. Note exchange gain or loss shall be ignored for the reason of GST. GARP is equal to average of buying rate and selling rate. Segment 6 input tax credit. GST 1. The details of the outward supplies to be furnished in every registered person. Invoice by the GST 2A based on the GST 1 invoice furnishing facility furnished in every supplier. Recipient can generate the statement of inward supply and GST 2A auto-populate and GST 1 filed by a supplier. GST 2B static month-wise auto-drafted statement or regular tax introducing GST portal like 2A like remind. GST 3B consolidated details of outward supplies, inward supplies, GST payable and GST paid shall be reported by every registered person. Serial number particular GST 2A, GST 2B type dynamic and static. GST 2B dynamic and GST 2B static. GST TDS and TC detailed reflected 2A are not reflected. Details of invoice if the GST 1 filed after due date. Details of the invoice of the GST 1 filed after due date and GST 2A reflected. GST 2B not reflected, however, is reflected in the subsequent one GST 2B. Purpose and reference are not available in ITC. Supply recipient. The outward supplies in the GST 1 are filed by due date, reflected by GST 2B mismatch. The available ITC of GSR 3B self-assessed ITC on GSR 2B is equal to minus blocked ITC minus used by the non-business purpose class used by exemptions applies correct plus GST under RCM plus re-availment of ITC reversed ITC reversed plus ITC not available in earlier period but reflecting GSR to be kind. This should be added to get the exact amount of input tax correct. Reversal of input tax credit with the suppliers not filed GSR 3B section 31 trade with the rule 37 supplier recipient 1 2 3 4 are reported in the GSTR 1 and it is filed within the date. ITC reflect on GSR 2B or 2B and recipient auto populated. ITC available in GSR 3 for self-assessment for and GST 3B is not filed by September 30 of the next financial year. And then for the reversal of the ITC available on 30 September financial year along with the interest of 18% and election of 53 but before November 30th of the financial GSTR 3B filed after September 30th of financial ITC reverse excluding interest earlier than the availment without any time limit. Manner of utilization of credit section 49(5) CGST Act 2017. Principle 1. Principle 1. There is no restriction with respect to IGST. The IGST credit can be used for payment of any GST liability and any GST credit can be used for payment of IGST liability. Among other taxpayer respective credit can be used for payment of respective liabilities and cross calculations are allowed. Principle 2. Priority IGST payable GST credit GST payable can be used SGST payable UTGST can be used. The GST payable, SGST payable, GST payable can be used, IGST payable can be used, IGST payable can be used. Principle before utilizing CGST and SGST, before utilizing CGST and SGST credit, the credit of IGST would be completely exhausted only order of the utilization of IGST credit specified in Principle 1. Principle 4. Any pay ITG should be placed. Principle 4. For payment of IGST liability, credit should be utilized following under IGST, then payment of IGST, then CGST credit, then SGST credit, and UTGST credit can be crossed off. Notes. If IGST credit after utilizing the payment of IGST liability can be used for payment of CGST and SGST and UTGST liability of any other person. So the multiple answer possible example the view of the depending upon the CGST and SGST liability it would be appropriated. GST compensation should be available in the ITGST and utilized only for the payment of the GST compensation outward supplies. Compensation will be available in ITC and utilized for the payment of GST compensation. Condition for amendment of ITC section successful. Only the credit, only the registered person can avail ITC. Inward supply on the ITC can be availed used by you should be used or intended to be used on the course of other substance. Recipient should be in possession of the tax paid document and tax invoice and debit note and ISD invoice or bill of entry. A recipient should actually receive the goods and services. The supplier should have furnished a detail of invoice register 1. Supplier should have paid the tax with respect to supply with respect of 30 September next financial rule 37. The recipient should have filed the return as per GST 3B. GST paid on inward supply should be reflected in GST 2B and ITC availment and should not be restricted as per the 38 as ITC shall be restricted in GST 2B. Input tax means the central tax GST, set tax GST, given territory and change the supply of goods and service both are made registered person and actually include tax paid on reverse basis and the IGST charge on the input of goods and does not include tax paid on a composition scheme.